Be sure to check out my second channel called Rob Explains. There you can check out videos where I explain things outside of comic books. So as we get into our final video on Batman Endgame, because of the vast amount of information we'll be covering here, I'm going to leave it to you guys to catch up with my previous videos in the Endgame playlist in order to ensure that you have a strong foundation for everything that we'll be talking about here. Having said that, our discussion with Endgame picks up immediately after Bruce Wayne's encounter with the Joker at Arkham Asylum, and where the Joker had exposed Batman to a version of the toxin that contained a paralytic. He had also taunted Bruce Wayne with the idea that he was going to take over Gotham and that Bruce Wayne himself would be left paralyzed and unable to take any action to stop the Joker. And so what we find is that the story transitions to Bruce Wayne in the Batcave under the care of both Julia and Alfred. As we're told, immediately following the Joker's attack on Gotham, which had occurred off-panel, Alfred and Julia had made it to safety. What we're also told is that the virus the Joker unleashed on Gotham transmits from one person to another by way of saliva secreted through sneezing, coughing, or laughing, which tells us that the virus is airborne, making it far more contagious and transmittable than if it were contracted using a water source. In addition to this form of transmission is really more of a gag for the Joker, in that because of the nature of his character and his desire to bring Gotham to its knees in a comedic fashion, the idea of a transmutable virus contracted through laughter is really just fitting here. Furthermore, Julia and Alfred had ran tests on the virus against every previous version of the Joker toxin that had ever been released, from the benign strains that cause constant laughter to strains that kill almost immediately, and that nothing they have tried has been able to combat this version of the toxin. Now, this is something that I'd like you to keep in the back of your head, and the reason why is because what Scott Snyder is going to do over the course of this story is drop several indications that there's a lot more to the Joker than we'd initially been led to believe throughout his publication history. Now, something else that's particularly important here is Jim Gordon. For the most part, the significance of Jim Gordon comes in both the information he provides as well as the amount of emphasis that Scott Snyder puts on his character. As Jim Gordon tells us, with the entire city infected by the Joker's toxin, all of the citizens who have been exposed are now raging monsters. In addition to this, the military has taken notice of the pandemonium unleashed within the city of Gotham, and because the Justice League are out of commission following their attack on Bruce Wayne, the only option left seems to be the wholesale quarantine of the entire city. Furthermore, the nature of the toxin is such that it essentially twists its victim inside out by transforming their affection into hatred. Now, this is a particularly strategic move by the Joker, and the reason why is that, as we'll find in this story, the citizens of Batman look to him with some measure of affection, and that while he operates outside of the law, the tactics of his vigilante attitude allow for a way to clean up Gotham and remove criminals who would have otherwise faced the legal system and most likely ended up as free men. As a result, once Bruce arrives in Gotham proper, he's met with a scene that's quite literally complete pandemonium, with infected citizens destroying property and killing non-infected citizens as well as each other. Now, in the mind of Bruce Wayne, the citizens of Gotham are simply infected with a virus, which is something that can be treated with a cure of some kind, so long as Batman can discover the way that the virus was made. What Scott Snyder is going to do here, though, is split this story into half superstition and half history by establishing a legend about the Joker, but also tying his origin directly into the history of the Lazarus Pits and Final Crisis. And tasking Gordon with looking into the history of Gotham Presbyterian Hospital, the destination of Batman in his hopes of finding a cure, Gordon's investigations lead him to discover that as far back as 400 years, every major incident that has ever taken place in Gotham City has featured the Joker lurking in the background, which tells us that, assuming this is true, and that the Joker has been in Gotham for 400 years, then his list of victims ranges from newborn babies all the way up to the elderly. However, while searching this information, Jim Gordon realizes that someone has made their way into his apartment. Drawing a gun and investigating, Jim Gordon is met with the sudden arrival of the Joker, who doesn't really knock him out so much as stun him. Switching to Batman, his arrival at Gotham Presbyterian comes with the recognition that among the individuals housed within this particular hospital is Joe Chill, the man who killed his parents. Now, Scott Snyder is very particular about how Joe Chill is depicted here. And what I mean is that Snyder does not provide a context as to how Joe Chill died. The reason being because in Batman's continuity prior to the New 52, Joe Chill died in several different ways depending on who wrote the story. In the original Batman series from the Golden Age, Joe Chill was turned on by his own henchmen and killed after learning that the death of Bruce Wayne's parents led to the creation of Batman. But in the post-crisis age with 1987's Batman Year 2, Joe Chill was killed by a vigilante named the Reaper after Joe Chill had killed Bruce Wayne's parents. What Scott Snyder is basically doing here is leaving which version this is completely ambiguous, allowing us to determine which one we prefer. but ultimately saying that once again, Batman's history did not change with the New 52 reboot, and everything from the Golden Age to the present day all happened in the span of 5 years. But regardless, with the revelation of Joe Chill being alive, albeit by unknown means, Batman's attention is drawn to a makeshift depiction of Crime Alley, which serves to confirm that the Joker truly does know that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Investigating the scene, Batman's met with a young man named Duke along with his parents. Now, Duke is a character that's not particularly important for the story, but once we get into the origins for We Are Robin, we'll actually find that Duke is one of the many characters portrayed in that story. However, because the entire scene of Duke, his parents, and Joe Chill exists behind a glass wall, Batman comes to realize that the Joker has set this up as a replay of the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne, with Duke and his parents standing in their place. And transitioning back to Jim Gordon, with the Joker making his presence known, Jim Gordon takes up arms to protect himself, with the Joker taunting that he has a host of new tricks up his sleeve. What I'd also like you to notice here is that, like Bruce Wayne, Jim Gordon doesn't want to believe that the Joker is truly 400 years old and possibly immortal. The reason why is that if Gordon believed this, it would also mean that the Joker could never truly be stopped and that Gordon could never be able to get revenge for Joker shooting his daughter during the events of the Killing Joke. And so in a split panel scene representing life and death, Batman breaks the glass and jumps in front of Joe Chill's bullet to save Duke's parents, while Jim Gordon fires a shot in the chest of the Joker, killing him. Now, the reason why this is important is that once we get into the section detailing the virus, its contents, and especially what it represents, what we're going to find is that this dichotomy of life and death is going to be a major theme in not just the nature of the virus, but the final confrontation between Joker and Batman. And so in the face of hope and with their lives being saved, Duke's parents look to Batman as a savior and as a result succumb to the toxin and turn into the infected. What's also interesting about this is that Duke does not turn into an infected person. Now, whether this is due to the pressure of the situation and the mixed emotions Duke is feeling is never explored by Snyder, but I would surmise that Duke never truly looked to Batman as a savior and as a result, remained free from the influence of the Joker toxin. But regardless of the reason, with Duke in tow, Batman flees the hospital as various infected begin to enter. Now, transitioning back to Gordon, Snyder essentially confirms that the Joker is immortal when Jim Gordon calls Batman informing him that the Joker has been shot. However, during their conversation, the Joker rises up behind Gordon, and while we don't immediately find out what happened to him, the Joker picks up a line and addresses Batman directly. And so with Batman arriving at Jim Gordon's apartment, he finds that Gordon is apparently dying with a hatchet buried in his chest. However, as Batman instructs Duke to locate a first aid kit, Jim Gordon succumbs to the Joker toxin, heals from his injuries, and attacks Batman. And so after abandoning the Batcave during the call between Jim Gordon and Batman, Julia Pennyworth arrives and knocks Jim Gordon out using a tranquilizer gun. What Scott Snyder also does here is establish a sense of urgency as well as a window in terms of how much time Batman has to save the citizens of Gotham. As she explains, as soon as a victim is infected with the virus, the cells of their body begin to break down, causing their bodies to quite literally rot from the inside out. And because it acts so fast, while Julia doesn't know exactly how long it will take for the victims to die, the fact remains that Batman no longer has virtually unlimited time to track down the source of the virus and develop a cure. Instead, he has to work as fast as possible since he might have days or only hours. And so contacting Dick Grayson for help, the conversation between himself and Batman provides us with some extremely important information. The first is that the virus used by the Joker as well as the blood of the Joker himself contains a regenerative property which explains how the Joker survived Jim Gordon's shot to the chest, as well as how Jim Gordon survived the hatchet to his chest. However, the serum is similar to the same chemical used in the Lazarus pits, but it's also different. While the Lazarus pits do provide those who enter with a measure of immortality as long as they continually use it, the chemical in the Joker's toxin as well as the Joker's blood seems to serve the same purpose, except that it contains a more pure form of the chemical found in the Lazarus pits. What this means is that while the virus itself will kill the infected person rather than granting them immortality, until their cells break down, they will heal from almost any wound. And so what Scott Snyder does is continue to establish that Batman's history predates the New 52, and wrapping this story around into the events of Final Crisis, as well as providing an origin of sorts for the Joker himself. Traveling to visit a man named Paul Decker who specializes in chemistry and biology, and by extension possesses vast knowledge of organisms in nature that possess immortality by being able to manipulate their own cells, Scott Snyder establishes that where Decker and other colleagues look to history as a way to measure absolute facts, Decker does look to history for the same purpose, but also to verify the truth behind myths and legends within Gotham. What we're told is that at some point along the line, Decker stumbled upon the existence of a chemical known as dionysium, which interacts directly with and enhances the genes that deal with the body's ability to repair itself. Originally, this chemical was extremely rare and only existed in certain parts of the world. The first person to come into contact with it was Vandal Savage, who was exposed to dionysium in its most pure form, which is the reason why Savage remains completely immortal. The second person was Ra's al Ghul, who discovered a corrupted form. Now, how it was that the dionysium became corrupted is unknown, but using this corrupted form to create a series of Lazarus pits around the world, Ra's al Ghul was able to grant himself immortality as long as he kept himself exposed to the pits. Now, where Vandal Savage and Ra's al Ghul had traveled the world after being granted immortality by the dionysium, the Pale Man had traveled to Gotham after being exposed to the chemical. Now, the Joker's history before he encountered the compound is never explored here, but what Snyder's telling us is that the Joker himself appears to be over 400 years old, had gone by the name the Pale Man, and the information that Gordon had stumbled upon was actually accurate, and the Joker had been using his immortality as a way to inflict chaos in Gotham. Faced with no other option and recognizing that only one organization had the means to effectively resurrect the dead, Batman travels back to meet the Court of Owls. Now, where the court believes that Batman has come to seek his revenge and eliminate them completely, instead, Batman only came seeking information. Because the Talons existed as men who had died and were later resurrected using a substance called Electrum, Batman came to the conclusion that Electrum was actually a form of dionysium and that the court would likely know where to find it. However, where the court confirms that Batman's correlation between Electrum and dionysium is accurate, they also state that Electrum is a corrupted form and that the Joker seems to be the only person in Gotham with a pure compound in his blood. And so with the court taunting Batman and saying that they build their models of Gotham from its caverns to its skyscrapers in a fashion to remind them that they are all beneath the city, Batman destroys the model and waits for the appearance of the Talon, telling us that this version of the Talon is a man named Uriah, who was the first and operated around the time that the Joker would have first appeared in Gotham. Batman overpowers Uriah and demands to know if the legends are true and the Joker is indeed over 400 years old. But before we get an answer, we actually transition back to the Joker himself as we pick up with his entrance into the Batcave through the same means that he had achieved during Death of the Family. However, almost immediately after entering, he's actually shot by Alfred Pennyworth. Now, what the Joker also does is continue expanding on his life experiences by stating that he had witnessed a play Alfred had performed in his youth called King Lear. As a play centering on the title character and the fall of his kingdom after banishing his youngest daughter and his authority being usurped by his other two daughters, one of the most important characters was the Fool, who served to provide King Lear with a candid view of things without fear of punishment. While the story of King Lear depicts the Fool as an honest right-hand man, within the context of Endgame, the Joker views Alfred as the right-hand man of Batman, but where the Fool served a significant purpose in that he told King Lear what was right and what was wrong, while Alfred does the same, Joker juxtaposes the two roles in saying that in the end, both Alfred and the Fool only really existed to serve their own purposes. And so in the process of hunting for the Joker, Alfred is taken by surprise when the Joker slices off his right hand using a meat cleaver. And so transitioning back to the streets of Gotham, we find that the Joker had raided Batman's cave for the purpose of taking items like the Red Hood helmet and the giant Joker card for the purpose of creating a makeshift parade in the streets as a way to taunt Batman. From here, we join Bruce Wayne as he gathers the Bat family, including Jason Todd, Nightwing, Barbara Gordon, and Harper Row, in an effort to organize a plan that will allow them to confront the Joker and defeat him. However, as Harper states, the problem they have is that the Joker will expect this and will see them coming from a mile away. In addition to this, the question becomes, if there are only 5 of them, why does Batman have so many masks? At this point, the group is met with the arrival of Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, Bane, and others from Batman's Rogues Gallery. As Bruce Wayne states, in order to defeat the Joker, he needs to access the Dionysium stored in his nervous system, which means accessing his spine, and that the rest of the Bat family as well as the villains will act as human shields in addition to a distraction for the various citizens who have become infected. As such, because Batman's villains look to function within the city of Gotham for their own criminal needs, the issue is that in order for Gotham to stay intact, the Joker simply has to be defeated. And so with his various allies playing out their roles, Batman makes his way onto the lead float to confront the Joker. However, as soon as he arrives, the Joker seems to exercise some measure of control over the infected as they all begin to laugh in unison, creating a chorus of laughter that becomes deafening to most everyone. Using this as a momentary distraction, the Joker's plan is revealed when we learn that with the city under siege, Batman would have had no choice other than to turn to his allies and enemies in an effort to band together and destroy the Joker. Using this opportunity, the entire situation as we see it here was basically a trap, with the Joker moving in to kill the entire Bat family by releasing a nerve agent that kills within minutes. Furthermore, the Dionysium that Batman has been looking for is actually located directly beneath the city of Gotham in a cavern which has remained hidden from everyone for hundreds of years with the exception of the Joker, which is the reason why he stayed around Gotham all this time. However, the plan of the Joker is thwarted when we discover that Batman is actually Dick Grayson in disguise, and that the real Batman had been analyzing the model city of Gotham as it was depicted in the Court of Owls design. This, combined with the Joker's information, allowed Batman and Julia to work together for the purpose of intercepting the signal the Joker intended to use to destroy the Dionysium and keep Batman from gaining the cure, as well as access to the Dionysium proper. Now, what's really interesting here is that while Batman accesses the well, he and Julia have a momentary discussion about the Joker. In the eyes of Bruce Wayne, between the information he gained from Uriah the Talon and his own studies, he is absolutely entrenched in the idea that the Joker is only a man and had to have discovered the well after the events of Death of the Family when he was thrown from the cliff, which explains how his face healed. But in the mind of Julia, it's entirely possible that the Joker discovered the well hundreds of years ago and has been using it ever since. Now, while the evidence seems to contradict Batman's opinion and support Julia's, in the end, Bruce Wayne seems unwilling to accept that there might be more to the Joker than was initially thought. And so after using a device to capture a sample of the Dionysium in its purest form, where Batman intends to send the sample back to Julia and retreat to the city, their ability to disrupt the Joker's signal is stopped, allowing him to detonate the bombs. And so with the case crashing down around them, Batman and the Joker engage in one last fight when Julia pulls the sample back to the surface. Now, the conflict here between the Joker and Batman is of extreme importance for several reasons. The first is that as the ages have passed, while the Dionysium in this pit was pure at one point in time, it has since degraded in quality in the same way that soda goes flat. And because Batman was able to create an immune blocker over the course of 15 seconds that could thwart this impure version of Dionysium, if the Joker is using this less pure version, then he would die of his injuries. But if the Joker is truly hundreds of years old and had encountered this pit when it was pure, then he won't die from his injuries. The other half of the importance of their discussion is that with the Joker and Batman essentially fighting to the death, while both are gravely injured and Batman admits that he's going to die from his injuries in minutes, that in the end, he does believe that the Joker is the Pale Man and has been operating in Gotham for hundreds of years. Now, whether Batman truly believes this or not is left ambiguous, since both Batman and the Joker seem to die from their injuries at the end of this story. But because the Joker constantly needed Batman as an enemy if for no other reason than to verify his existence, even if the Joker does survive, the last memory he will have of Batman is acquiescence in that Bruce Wayne admitted that the Joker was truly an immortal force and that Batman was only a man, which in turn would destroy the Joker's purpose of existing and leave him with no reason to live. And so picking up 2 weeks later, the story concludes with the surviving citizens of Gotham restored to their sanity and with the city itself in mourning over the death of Batman. In addition to this, after being confronted by Julia with a cryptic letter that Bruce had left behind, Alfred gives us some essential insight into the mind of Bruce Wayne in that because his role as Batman was based on the death of his parents, in the end, the road Bruce Wayne chose would have inevitably led to his own death, whether by the Joker, some other criminal, or a chance shooting. Furthermore, the nature of Batman in the eyes of Gotham itself was that because he was just a man, he would have been killed in the same capacity as anyone else, and because of this, rather than standing above his city in the same way as someone like Superman, instead, Batman stood eye level with his citizens, leading them into the fight and never knowing if he would ever make it out alive at the end. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and that concludes Batman Endgame. So the next thing we get into with regards to Batman will be Jim Gordon Batman, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.